Do you want your drifts to stop looking like this? And this? Well, then you've come to the right place. What is up, guys? Tomcat here, and today I'm going to be doing a beginner's guide to drifting in Forza Horizon 4. Now, this tutorial is going to be literally for, like, if you have never done any drifting in a Forza game, if you are just brand new to it and you want to learn the absolute basics, that is what this video is for. Which is also why we are using a bone stock factory 350Z. Completely factory. Now, this is the area of the map we are going to be using, and the reason why we're going to be using it is because it provides you every single tool that you need in order to learn how to drift a car, and in order to learn how to slide a car and recover a car properly. Now, the reason why I've chosen the 350Z to conduct this tutorial is because of the fact that the 350Z comes with a locking diff from the factory and just enough power to get the car sideways without being either monstrously powerful and spinning up the rears at the mere touch of the throttle, or also while being powerful enough that it's not bogging out and basically, you know, choking out your slides every time you try to drift it. But with all that being said, one of the most important things to cover first off, right off the bat, is settings. Now, your settings for this are very, very important. You're going to want to have your traction control and stability control off. They have to be off, no question about it. Now, I am also using a manual with clutch setup. Now, you can do this with manual. However, there are some parts of the tutorial that require manual with clutch, so I would recommend it because you have more control. Damage and tire wear should be on none, and rewind should be on, just in case you want to rewind after making a mistake. So the first thing we're going to be working on is we're going to head over to one of the small circles in this drift area and focus on just getting the back end of the car out, just a tiny little bit. Now, there's not going to be any tuning or any upgrading in this video. This is all just practical application and practice. So you're going to get a slow drive going around one of these small circles, and then you're just going to gas it just a little bit, and then wait for the back end to come out, and then recover it. Don't try to carry it through. Don't try to keep it going yet. Just get used to catching the car. That's the only thing that I want you guys to be doing right now. Now, once you've done this a few times, then you can start to keep getting on the gas a little bit more and a little bit more, and start to carry the slide a little bit further, and that is going to require you to vary the amount of input you're giving to the throttle and the steering. This is all throttle and steering. That's all this is. Now, most people do one of two things. They either give too much throttle and spin out, or don't give enough throttle and end up straightening back up. You don't want either of those things. So a balanced throttle is what you need. Now, if I get too close to the inside, or rather if I get too close to spinning out, you can do one of two things. You can either back off the throttle or counter steer more. If your counter steer is maxed out and you're still starting to spin out, you need to back off the throttle. You have no other option. Now, if you start to straighten up, add throttle and turn in towards the inside of your drift, not out of it. So, as you can see, when I need to counter steer away, what I do is I'll turn away, but I'll also let off the throttle a little bit. But if I need to add more angle back in, if I'm starting to straighten up, turn into the corner and throttle into it, but be ready to come back into it with that counter steer and back off the throttle just a little. This is all about modulation. Now, fortunately, the 350Z is right in that optimal power range to where it's not necessarily going to, you know, it's not going to necessarily try to get away from you or anything like that, but at the same time, it does require you to pay attention to what you're doing. And something else that I can't stress enough to people that are just starting out is make sure that you go back around the other direction and repeat the same exercise. So you'll throttle down, get the back end of the car out a little bit, and when you go too much, that's what happens. And I wanted to do a couple of these just to show you guys, if you stay on the throttle too much and you don't give enough counter steer, you will spin it around. 100% you will spin it around. Now, the main key points to where if you are continuously spinning out, just back off the throttle and work back into it from there. Work back into it slowly instead of just throwing all the power at it all at once. Whereas if you're you're straightening up constantly, like what I was demonstrating just a second ago, if you're straightening up constantly, add more throttle and steer into the drift more before you counter steer back out of it. Your goal is to be able to keep a continuous circle around this, around these barriers while getting the front bumper as close to them as you can. Now, you also want to be able to vary them, though. You want to be able to vary that distance. So if you want to go wide, you should be able to go wide. If you want to go narrow, you should be able to go narrow and differentiate between both of those approaches. Now, the bigger circle is what I want you guys to go to once you feel comfortable in first gear around the first one. This circle is about twice the size. So once you get up into second gear, the thing with second gear is that your speeds are going to be higher, so the amount of correction is going to be a little bit different. And that's where the practice is going to start to come into play. But this is also where clutch kicking is going to come into play. And that's why I told you guys to put manual with clutch on. Now, this car, like I said, it's got just enough power, but sometimes when you're going around in second gear, the easiest way to kick the back end out is going to be to just keep your throttle on and just clutch in and out, bam, like just real quick, and that will snap the car sideways rather than easing it sideways with the throttle. Now, it's going to require faster counter steer. You're going to need to steer out of it quicker, but once you're sideways, once you're there, this car is really actually well balanced with the tire size, the gearing, and the power to hold a continuous slide in second gear around that particular radius. So I'm going to show it to you guys with telemetry now so you can see my steering angle, and then if you watch the clutch percentage, you can see how it goes on and off, on and off, on and off, and that's how I'm keeping this slide going when the car actually starts to slow down a little bit. So that's the thing. If you start to lose wheel speed, bam, clutch kick. And the thing is, you can't do that when you are just using manual. And also notice that I haven't referenced the e-brake yet at all. I haven't referenced the e-brake whatsoever. And that's because I feel like in order to learn how to drift properly, you need to learn how to drift based on throttle and based on clutch control and steering control rather than just pulling the e-brake, heading into a turn, and then just like, oh yeah, I drifted, quote-unquote drifted. So again, it's all about learning how to work the throttle, work the steering, work the clutch, and then you can add the e-brake into it. But, of course, there are a couple of other things that you need to master first. Now, one of the biggest things is transitioning. And these, again, these circles are perfect for that because one is a smaller circle, the other is a larger circle. So the procedure here is I want you guys to do second gear around the large circle and first gear around the small circle. So you're going to have to change down as you go between these circles and do this figure eight. So, and you can do as many laps around each one before transitioning to the other one as you want, but right as you come out of this smaller one, bang it into second gear with a clutch kick and then carry on your slide around the larger circle. That's going to get you in the mindset of clutch kicking and or shifting as you transition from one slide to the other, and that will help you carry your momentum. Now, going down is a little bit different, but in this case, you should be able to swing the back end right back around in first gear pretty easily. So once you've got this figure eight down, really dial it in and really practice it because this is going to be one of those times where you're going to want to get that practice. And once you get this down in a 350Z that's stock, you'll be able to jump into like an FD car and go nuts, you know? So this is what's going to give you those foundation basics that you really are going to need going forward. And put it this way, if you learn in like an FD car, then you're not really going to be able to go back and learn and just pick up just as you were in something like this. Whereas if you learn in something like this, you'll be able to go right into an FD car and have a blast. Now, the e-brake. So the e-brake, what I want you guys to do here is just get comfortable with it, right? So right back and forth between this little area, just get comfortable e-braking and clutching at the same time. That's a big thing, is whenever the e-brake is on, whenever I'm using the e-brake, I'm using the clutch as well. That way, it's not cutting the engine, it's not, you know, choking anything out. It's just, you're able to free rev so that when you let go of the e-brake, you can bang the revs out with a clutch kick and really just launch the car into your next drift. So, get used to the way the e-brake feels, get used to counter steering as soon as you hit the e-brake and the clutch, and get used to being able to aim the car with the e-brake. Now, don't get me wrong, using the e-brake is important, but it's also important to be able to slide around and drift around and control the car without relying solely on the e-brake. The e-brake is nothing more than a tool for drifting, essentially. And it's one of those things where it should definitely be part of your toolbox, as it were. But you can also see here, right when my e-brake comes on, my clutch comes on as well. Percentage goes up to 100%. So, back and forth right here, getting used to that e-brake is extremely, extremely important. Now, in a little bit, what you'll see is we actually go back and forth, but I also will do a little bit of a U-turn to go back the other way. And doing these U-turns is very, very important because that will get you used to e-braking in and then dumping the clutch, banging the revs out, and coming back the other way. So make that an exercise, right? Make that an exercise to e-brake on the way in, rev up, dump the clutch, and continue turning around. And you can do this in first gear or second gear. It depends on what you want to do. It depends on how you feel about where you are with the car. But this is a very important aspect of getting that technique down, because you're going to be e-braking into a turn while, changing gears, having the clutch in or clutch kicking it out as you release the e-brake. So there's a lot going on at once, but if you use this to practice it, if you use this as a method of practice, then it'll really help you get all of that stuff to come together as kind of one unit, so to speak. So now that we've made it to the end of the video, I want you guys to come away from this hopefully having learned something, and hopefully maybe having a little bit of a better time getting into drifting in Horizon 4. And if you're struggling with it, just remember that the main factor here is just practice. Practice, practice, practice over and over and over, and you will eventually get this dialed in. Now, for some people, it definitely comes a little bit easier than others, so don't get discouraged if your buddy learns how to drift quicker than you. And if that does happen, just keep getting after it and keep practicing and keep working on it, and eventually, I promise, you guys will get it. So, hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy it, make sure you click that like button. Tell me in the comments below what you guys thought of it, and if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys next time. Talk to you all later, and happy drifting.